March the 12th, 2023. Guys, there's information coming in from overseas about the fallout from the Silicon Valley Bank. It says that SVB International fallout. UK and the EU lenders lose $30 billion overnight. It's 30 billion pounds as panic spreads. You're looking at a picture of Silicon Valley Bank here, and Matt Gaetz has some interesting things to say about what he sees happening here, and I think he may be pretty close to being right. Let's take a look at that. It says the fallout from the run on the Silicon Valley Bank in California went international overnight, with British and European Union lenders seeing nearly 30 billion pounds wiped off their portfolios, and the Bank of England stepping in to take over the insolvency process for the British arm of the Silicon Valley Bank to protect the deposits and British firms tied to the bank. Now, the Bank of England is like our Federal Reserve here, basically the same thing. So since Friday, the Stocks Europe 600 Banks Index, which also includes leading British lenders, saw a mass sell-off in the wake of the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank, the largest American bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis. In total, the European UK banking index saw a one-day decline of 3.8%, with 33.5 billion euros, or $35.6 billion, being wiped off their balance sheets. Some of the UK's largest banks saw their shares fall significantly, with HSBC declining 4.6%, Lloyd's Banking Group falling 3.3%, and shares in NatWest going down by 2.5%, coming out of the Times of London. British-based investors in SVB have already reportedly failed to withdraw their funds from the UK-based branch of the investment bank, sparking fears that tech startups could potentially go under if the government doesn't intervene to save the bank. Tech startups there, tech startups here, especially in California, Silicon Valley. Now, one of the interesting things is that a lot of pharmacy was tied in here. New woke projects tied into this, whether dealing with censorship through the internet or whatever it was a lot of libtard stuff happening both in London and Europe and here with this bank. Said the British tech startup lobby group said that there's a sense of panic among its members, with Executive Director Dom Hollis saying, "We know that there are a large number of startup investors in the ecosystem which have significant exposure to SVB UK and will be very concerned. We have been engaging with the UK government, including Treasury and Number 10, about the potential impact, and I know the work has been going on overnight on policy options," he added. I'm sure this is a lot of overnight work going on across the planet, getting ready for the stock market to open in the morning. In response to the failure and potential of contagion, the Bank of England, Britain's equivalent to the U.S. Federal Reserve, announced in a late-night statement on Friday evening that it is planning to use its bank insolvency scheme to put the British branch of the SVB into resolution, which would allow for depositors to receive up to £85,000 in the coming days from the government's deposit insurance program. The administrator would then be put in charge of the insolvency process to divvy up the remaining UK assets between its creditors and large depositors. What about the small depositors? According to a report from the Financial Times, the financial advisory firm Interpath had been rumored as a potential candidate for the administration process. However, this is yet to be confirmed. Attempting to quell the panic, just as they did here last Wednesday in California, says the Bank of England said that the SVB UK has a limited presence in the UK and no critical functions supporting the financial system. Then why are they panicking and lost $40 billion overnight? The California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation has described SVB as being in sound financial condition before the run on the bank, which saw customers withdraw $42 billion, resulting in the bank having a negative cash balance of $958 million. While the Federal Deposit Insurance Company, or FDIC, in the U.S. pledged that all insured deposits in the bank will be honored, This may not be a huge comfort to many of the bank's customers, given that reportedly only 7% of SVB deposits are insured. The failure of the U.S.'s 16th largest bank has already begun to see calls for a federal bailout, which would once again see average Americans send their hard-earned tax dollars to some of the wealthiest in the country instead of letting the creative destruction of capitalism run its course. Former Dem presidential candidate Yang said that either the Treasury Department or the state of California should step in, arguing, in the absence of some kind of action, you'll see thousands of mass layoffs and defunct companies, a wiped-out generation of startups. Guys, what were those startups? We've seen a lot of tech-heavy censorship going on, a lot of pharmaceutical startups in trouble there. Now, again, he's saying that it will wipe out a generation of startups. Huge problems in California in particular, and spreading financial contagion that will infect a host of regional banks at a minimum. This wipe out of a generation of startups, kind of like a generation of vipers, if you see what's going on around the planet. It says, besides the risk of financial contagion, establishment figures on both the left and right have argued that it is necessary for national security to bail out the banks to prevent its tech startup customers from going bust, and thereby putting the U.S. at a disadvantage of the tech race against the likes of communist China. Now, that's an oxymoron when you realize how much of our secrets and technology have already been sold by guess who. There has been some pushback, however, against the idea of bailing out the California-based bank, including from Congressman Matt Gaetz. He said, if there is an effort to use taxpayer money to bail out Silicon Valley Bank, the American people can count on the fact that I will be there leading the fight against such a bailout, adding the financial arm. This is important. This is like the table of the money changers. It says the financial arm of Silicon Valley has just been severed before our very eyes. Tables being overturned, the evil that's coming out of these startups. Republicans pointed to the disastrous economic policies of the Biden administration and the ensuing Bidenflation for triggering the bank's failures, while other conservatives noted that Silicon Valley Bank likely deployed the use of woke, environmental, social, and governance scores in its operation called ESG, meaning that the bank may have prioritized, listen, left-wing causes instead of focusing on financial viability. We've seen it all across the country. Woke go broke, from sports to Hollywood. And by the way, the people in Hollywood, guys, in a different article from this I read earlier, did not get paid. The directors, the actors, the light men, all of this staff, the stage staffs, everything, nobody got their checks in this woke go broke situation. But I think we are definitely seeing the overturning of the money changers. It will affect the entire planet. Tomorrow, you may call it a stormy Monday if you want to, because I think that's what we're going to see. So be prepared. If you're tied up with the finances of this bank, good luck with that. Again, Monday, they're going to try to start sifting through this information. Of course, the big people will get their money first. The little people will be put last. But again, we just saw, as Matt Gaetz saw, the woke go broke financial arm of Silicon Valley being severed before our eyes. We're seeing it in Europe, UK. That table of the money changers is getting flipped, and you're going to see the effects from a smoking Babylon. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.